And this was a seminal moment in her life because he poured into her everything he knew. He said, I can't give you money, but I could teach you how to work with these roots. I can't give you money, but I can teach you how to heal yourself. This is the Return to Presence podcast, where we sit at the feet of Black women, past and present. I'm talking trailblazers, quiet disruptors, and everyday revolutionaries. Through their oral histories, our ancestors and elders left us a blueprint for healing, leading, and living with intention. I'm Dr. Shawna Murray-Browne, a cultural historian, psychotherapist, and liberatory strategist, here to help us uncover their lessons and carry their wisdom forward. Let's get into it. All right. Hey, y'all. Dr. Shawna in his house, and we are at episode 2 of the Return to Presence podcast. I'm so glad you're back. Listen, in episode 1, we had the honor of sitting at the feet of Dr. Anna Arnold Hedgeman, and we sat with some deep truths. The fact that, honestly, even 100 years ago, we were not doing a great job of taking care of ourselves while navigating oppressive systems. We got real about how we might be reliving those same realities in present day, and I invited you to slow down, do a bit of journaling, and make that come into full force. Now, today, we're sitting with the wisdom of Mrs. Pleasant Harrison. I mean, have you ever had someone dismiss what you knew to be true? If you've ever felt that the world around you was dismissing what was happening deep inside of you, and you can likely connect to Miss Pleasant Harrison's story. Even today, we understand that Black women are often ignored in the medical systems, that we are overdiagnosed and underdiagnosed, that we are very frequently misdiagnosed. And so even if we left the first episode with a passion for taking care of our bodies and, figuring out what we can do to better care for ourselves, there still lies a space for us to contend with ancestral wisdom around what is necessary for us to do this successfully. Pleasant Harrison, Haynes was her maiden name, was born in Branchville, South Carolina on November 8, 1915. She was the third of 6 children in her family. She tells a story of her father, Richard Haynes, who cut and sold lumber in the railroads, having to escape town in 1921 with the help of her mother, Elizabeth Haynes, after engaging in relations, y'all, with a white woman, because the KKK were planning to kill him. Harrison was then sent to be cared for by her maternal grandfather, a self-taught doctor, where she learned much of her herbalist insights. Life circumstances exposed her to a wide range of working environments, including field work, a canning factory, fabric making, housekeeping, and even caring for children. She became a skilled artisan and craftsperson who used her profound knowledge of plants to make everything from wine and soap to dye and medicines. Harrison knew the art of spinning, weaving, and needlework, and often used her skills to create aprons and tablecloths that incorporated the very plants she cultivated. She attended just a few years of high school before being married for a short time and bearing children. While working as a sewing machine operator for the United States Marine Corps, manufacturing upholstery and clothing, she suffered an accident that forced her resignation, where she retired on disability pension. Amidst her transition from her work there, she received a gold pin and was considered a highly honored civilian employee. Diagnosed with terminal cancer in 1949, Harrison described her experience of navigating an oppressive healthcare system and subsequently healing herself using her own herbs and natural remedies. At the time of this interview, she had already spent her time building a house for herself by hand, y'all, in Chislehurst, New Jersey. And so at in this oral history clip, we are listening to her speak to this oral historian about her experience of being diagnosed with terminal cancer. She speaks a little bit about the ways in which she was neglected and overlooked and how the wisdom from her grandmother saw her through. Let's take a listen.
If they kept the record. It's on record in the Philadelphia General that they called back and told them that they had an emergency. And at that time, if you were operated on in one hospital, they didn't take to another hospital for trouble. You went back. And it was during the Christmas holiday, and the doctor, Bernard Finch, operated on me, and he had left for California.
Now, you had been discharged.
I was discharged on Thursday.
And your
incision erupted, opened up.
Your mother called the police.
That's right.
And you were taken back to...
They would not accept me. I was sent home with terminal cancer, and it was just a matter of time, and they would not take me back in that hospital.
After she called them,
after she called the police came out with the emergency wagon to take me to the hospital. The police called the hospital to notify them to be ready. They were bringing in an emergency case. Now, I was laying in bed and I heard what that operator told, this person told this police, that I was a terminal cancer patient.
And they refused to have you back?
And they refused. They had no place for me. There was no one there. It was during the Christmas holiday to take care of me. If they brought me outside and I caught pneumonia, I wasn't going to live anyway. And they did not take me back. The police went around the corner and got the city doctor. And he was an optometrist. At one time, he was a medical doctor. And he came around, and his name was Dr. Levy. He lived on the 1800 North 8th Street. And he came in and told me, he said, "Miss Harrison, you are a sick lady. You're a sick person." He said, "Pray." And I said, "Dr. Levy, please pray for me. I am too weak. I'm sick." And he put his bag on the foot of my bed, and he knelt down. And he was Jewish. He prayed. And he told God that he left the matter in his hand. It was all he could do. He gave me 2 sulfur tablets because I was allergic to penicillin. And he told me that he had done all he could. I called my doctor. At that time was Dr. Gaskell. And he since died. And he couldn't come because he was ill at the time. Gaskell. He was in the 1900 North 12th Street. And on with the deal with the opening of the incision. I took my hands after I discovered that it had opened. And when I bent up, and see, I was relieved of the pain, then the devil sat in. I was laughing, because I was relieved I didn't have no pain. But the after effect. When I looked down, I had both of them, with the training that I had, was great help. I took both of my one hand and put it in one side and the other on the other, with the palm down to the abdomen. And I pressed it together and I held it. And I held it there until my mother could get me cleaned up. And I told her to get this, sent to one of the children to the drugstore and get this tape and this drain. And told Dr. Shaw what to send. And he sent what I needed, the gauze and the tape. And I stuck that tube in the thing that you catheterize in my stomach. And I took that tape and I taped it up. And I said, "Lord, if you don't leave me, I won't die." And guess what? This coming December will be 30 years. And I'm still alive. And they made me so angry. And they told my mother they wanted to know, keep them abreast of what happened, keep them informed. They wanted to know. And they made an appointment for me sometimes up in the spring at the Philadelphia General after they found out I survived. And I got dressed, and I was a sharp little chick in my opinion. I'm like Muhammad Ali. I knew I was something. I had a shape like a Coca-Cola bottle. Believe me. And I got dressed real sharp and pretty, expensive clothes, and combed my hair and put my earrings on. And I said, here's me, and I'm not dead yet. And guess what? I didn't take no more medicine. I made my concoctions and my fusions, and they say you're not allowed to do it, but I'm here, and I'll stand on the doctor's head and tell him he's too conceited.
To say what he doesn't know.
That what he doesn't know, because he caused me to suffer.
When you hear Mrs. Pleasant Harrison talk about the end of the story, right, where she has a powerful level of pride, that after the doctors decided that surely she had terminal cancer, surely she was going to die soon, and left her to die. There are so many experiences when we as Black women know for ourselves that what others are telling us isn't actually true. If Mrs. Pleasant Harrison had listened to those doctors, had believed that she should simply be left to die, that 30 years later, what we were listening to in this oral history clip would have never happened. She pulled on the wisdom, but also the courage from her elders to be able to care for herself, not only enduring the level of pain, to sew herself back up, to tape herself back up with her mother's support, but also to make the decision, right? I don't believe that these doctors are right. I'm going to lean into the wisdom that I have and make my own concoctions and my fusions, the way that she said. And that's what allowed her to bask in her beauty, like Muhammad Ali, as a Coca-Cola shaped bottle, as she said, to be able to ground ourselves. What I want to really hone in on in this time is a question for you. Are you so in tune with your body? Are you so in tune with your own spiritual or practice that you would be able to trust yourself over a medical professional? That you would be able to trust yourself in the midst of everyone else around you? Now, this is not an episode, because I am not a medical doctor, where I'm telling you not to take your medicine. This is an episode where I am inviting us to consider how we can listen to our own wisdom in our own bodies, how we can connect and commune with the land as an ally as we make our ascension throughout our life. I'm curious of when's the last time you actually communed with the land? When's the last time you went outside, no shoes on your feet, and actually let your feet touch the ground? When's the last time you called on an elder, and maybe not your grandparent, but an older elder, a wise person in your family, and sat at their feet, gathered their insights, and used it as a field of study? I think that what Mrs. Pleasant Harrison is teaching us is that if we take our ancestral wisdom seriously, it is likely to be our lifeline. Now, if I could ask Miss Pleasant Harrison a question, it would probably be, what was in these concoctions and them fusions? I want to know what on earth her ancestor let her know she should go outside to gather, and what was she doing? What did she put together to be able to heal herself? Because what we're really getting is a small glimpse of a lifelong experience of her having to nurse herself to health. I'm also curious, I would also ask her, what did the doctors say? Because surely she didn't have terminal cancer, right? We won't know. We won't never know whether or not Miss Pleasant Harrison was simply misdiagnosed or if she actually healed herself from terminal cancer. But what we do know is that we don't have to only rely on what's given to us. Now it's time for the presence practice, where I share what rose up in me and what it might mean for how we live today. So y'all, I know we've been talking a bit about the importance and complexity of really honoring Pleasant Harrison's insights when she's talking about and modeling for us in her oral history about relying on oneself, being self-reliant. And, one of the things that comes up for me when I think about that and why we had to come back to this and make sure that we recorded this properly is my experience walking into motherhood. I really meticulously planned my birthing experience and journey. One, because, as a Black woman, we already know that these health care systems don't do as much caring as maybe we feel like they should. When I was pregnant with my baby, I gave birth at a birthing center. She was born in a pool of water. It was a beautiful experience up until maybe 5 to 7 days later, when something just didn't feel right. There was no doctor for me to call to check. I just felt like something wasn't right with my baby. I would look at her, and the way that the vibrancy she had shared with us when she first was born sort of shifted by day 6 or 7. And I couldn't shake this gut feeling that something was wrong with my baby. And so when I think about Pleasant Harrison and her capacity and ability to lean in on her intuition, like, it makes me think of what began as like a gut intuition transformed and translated into me rushing my baby to the doctor, my baby being immediately admitted into the emergency room. Us finding ourselves spending just about a month in the PICU, pediatric intensive care unit, and really finding that my child, had I not actually listened to my intuition during that particular time, had I felt like I needed a doctor's approval to something clear to me to tell me that something wasn't right, that my daughter might not be here with us. And so she was admitted with a really serious illness. And, throughout the entire time we were in the hospital, y'all, and if you're a parent, if you're a mother, and you know how tender the experience is after you've given birth to a child. So here I am postpartum. My brand new baby is in a medically induced coma. She's not awake, and they had to give her specific antibiotics to remove the bacteria that was in her body. And we still, to this day, we don't actually know exactly what happened, how she ended up with meningitis, but I know that the doctors told me time and time again, if you hadn't listened to yourself, if you hadn't come at exactly the time, the outcomes would have been wildly different. Even while she was in the hospital, every single day, I had to advocate, I had to research, I had to be on the doctor's ass, on these nurses' backs, asking questions, not taking their word for it. I had to empower myself and trust myself with my ability to be able to advocate for my child in the midst of a really tender time, even for myself. And even when I wasn't sleeping, I was staring at my child this entire time. Now, when I think about this deep and super important lesson and message that Miss Pleasant Harrison is sharing with us through her own life story of how she saved her own life after being diagnosed with a terminal illness. It makes me think of this particular experience and journey where I had to do a similar thing. Now, one of the underlying aspects that truly supported me and being able to nourish myself and ground myself in the midst of a systemic neglect, of overwhelm, of fear, of angst, when the stakes are as high as our very own livelihood. My auntie, my mother-in-law, my husband, my besties would bring me tea. They would bring me hot tea. And, I don't know if you ever stayed in the hospital, but the food ain't good. It ain't. It's nasty. Okay. Even the tea. Okay. I'm not with the Lipton. Okay. Lipton ain't it. Okay. Microplastics everywhere. And so I wanted to share not only that story around, how these wisdoms around listening to your intuition, around relying on insights that you know for sure, around not being afraid to take your own wellness and care into your own hands and the wellness and care of your family, of your legacy into your own hands. This is what it means, I think, to truly be free, to truly heal yourself and to commit to that transformation. And so I want to show y'all, how I honor myself in my drinking of tea, which deeply is connected to Ms. Pleasant Harrison, and that she used herbs as well to ground herself, albeit differently. I want to share with you my practice. And so I feel like if you've watched any of the other episodes or listened to the other episodes, you'll find that I take ritual practice around healing very seriously, which is why it's a central aspect to what it means to return to presence for me. To return to presence happens in ritual oftentimes. And so, like any other time, I take my tea very seriously, down to the tea I'm drinking, not Lipton, okay? The honey I'm using, local. The cup I got that an elder actually gifted to me and painted, and my cutesy little tea kettle. So, if you are just listening and you're not watching, then I want you to know that right now what I'm doing is pouring very, very hot water into my fly ass cup. And, I really think that it's important if you're going to establish a tea practice for you to figure out what's super important for you, right? Now, when I was in the hospital with my baby, and she, it didn't matter how fancy the cup was. I mean, it would have been nice to have a fancy cup, but it didn't matter. But I don't use tea bags. I use a stainless steel tea strainer thing. And so that I can ensure that I'm getting the best quality tea, right? I also like to use tea, either make my own blend or support Black women-owned tea makers or blenders so that I can ensure that the quality of what I'm drinking is maintained. Okay, because we deserve the best, all right? And so I take the tea and I put it in the water. And then we need some sweetener, okay? Also, local honey is really good for your immune system. And so if you're watching, you see me taking my handy dandy gold spoon and the honey and placing it in my tea. And so I'm even very intentional, right, about the kind of tea that I'm drinking, okay? So the tea that I just put in my cup is called Love Liberates. If you know anything about the brand Adjourn Tea House, this is not sponsored. I just love Black business. But this particular blend has red clover, hibiscus, jasmine, ashwagandha, mullein, hibiscus, holy basil, stevia, rose, and raspberry leaf. And so it is intended specifically to be soothing to the heart space. And for those of us that have wombs, it's intended to be soothing to our womb space. And so being super intentional about what we're drinking, but also how we drink it is really important. And so I encourage you to consider the establishment of a practice that supports you in grounding yourself wherever you are, right? So no, when I was in the hospital with my baby and I had to make really specific decisions that were high stress, I didn't have the fancy tea kettle, I didn't have my cutesy cup, and I couldn't really command a certain kind of tea, even though my family had my back. But what I did have was the ritual of communing with myself of tea, a practice of sitting with myself, drinking something soothing, and returning to being present with myself in my own heart space so I can access the highest vibration and insight and guidance around healing for myself and for my family. Now listen, I know that you know someone that needs to hear this. I know you know someone that perhaps is navigating overwhelming physical health ailments, or maybe it's you. And I encourage you to send them this episode as inspiration for them to reconnect with themselves. And as usual, like, share, comment, reply. Connect with us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And I can't wait to connect with you next on the story of Queen Mother Moore, otherwise known as Audley Moore, on what it means to navigate the experience of loneliness, of seeking to connect with visionary wisdom, and honoring the truth of who you really are.